Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 2023 meeting of a Safe Silver Spring. A Safe Silver Spring hosts quarterly meeting with Montgomery County Police, and particularly with the leadership of the 3rd District. Our next meeting is going to be in May, and we'll have special meetings as necessary. I want to thank our board members, Eric Hensel, Danielle Terrelong, Karen Matson, Amy Henchy, Daniel Karoma, and Jacob Newman for the work that they do for us. The way we have this organized, Commander McBain will make a presentation. I think we'll hear from his lieutenants at the end. We'll open it up to questions. You can either give us your questions orally or you can put them in the chat, and we try to answer everything. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and let me turn it over to Commander McBain. Welcome, Commander McBain.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate it. So while I'm talking here and starting this, Lieutenant Tony Galador is going to put up our PowerPoint. We're going to stick with this, and I will say that I felt pretty good about my PowerPoint from the last time, but Tony this is his thing, and I think he's put some really good things in the PowerPoint, and this is how we're gonna kind of keep going with these meetings. I think it was received pretty well. So real quick, I'd love to say that that things have settled down in Silver Spring as far as the changeover, but I think Lieutenant Galador is the only lieutenant that was on the last call when we finished out 22. So I'd like to give the 2 newest lieutenants in Silver Spring a chance just to introduce themselves, just a quick minute for each of them. And we'll start with Lieutenant Greg Schmiel, and then we'll go to Lieutenant Al Diezenkowski. Were they on?
I don't know that Greg is.
Okay, so just so you know, Lieutenant Schmiel is he's a duty commander tonight, so he's working the whole county, so he may be tied up on something. Did Lieutenant Diezenkowski get on?
Yes.
Okay. Here he is.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Lieutenant Al Diezenkowski, recently assigned down to the 3rd District here under Commander McBain. I've been a Montgomery County police officer for 19 years or so now. Spent some time in the 4th District Patrol. I was on one of our community action teams when it ran the entire county. I've worked in plainclothes for a couple of years. I was a sergeant for over 9 years, and now I'm a recent lieutenant here. So I oversee our Henry sector, as well as our midnight shifts and our field training program here in the 3rd District. I'm excited to be here.
And so Al also neglected to say that prior to Silver Spring or the 3rd District, he oversaw the whiskey units, which I know some of you have heard of that, but it's the alcohol unit that works the whole county, and had some highly effective operations down in Silver Spring, and we're definitely going to pick at his brain about things we can do with DUI enforcement in the coming year. And so Lieutenant Schmiel is going to oversee our Ida sector. That's the White Oak area and Burtonsville and Briggs Cheney. And he's also going to oversee our special assignment team and our DCAT team, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So with that, let's go to the next slide, Tony. So we talked about this before, but if there's any newcomers on the call, this is the Silver Spring. This is the 3rd District, and it's broken down into the George, Henry, and Ida sectors. George sector being downtown Silver Spring. The Ida sector is that purplish mark in the middle. That's White Oak. And as we go up towards Burtonsville, that's also part of the Ida sector. And then down on the Prince George's County and PG County line, we have our Henry sector, both the Henry 1 and Henry 2. So that's just to give you a little bit of perspective of what we're talking about. This is the same heat map that we showed last time. This is where we're seeing most of our crime. And I'll tell you that these heat spots they don't change a lot, and they stay relatively the same, and those are kind of where we really focus a lot of the work that we do in the district. Not to say that we're not everywhere else, but that's where we're seeing some of our crime. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So these are hot topics. Obviously, the death of Tyree Nichols in Memphis is on everybody's mind. I don't know if anybody paid attention to it, but Chief Marcus Jones put out a release, and basically, and I think that anybody would agree with them across this entire country, especially in this county, that it was horrifying and unacceptable. Some of the highlights that I do want to say, though, are in Montgomery County, especially after the George Floyd incident, and as we've evolved over the last few years, we've put a lot of emphasis on our training, on our technology, on our reporting, on our transparency, and specifically on de-escalation, how we calm things down as opposed to ramp them up. And I think that the things that we're doing and the transparency that we're showing have really resulted in Montgomery County, one, not being in a situation like Memphis, Tennessee, but two, just highly trained and highly we have a professionalism about ourselves that I think is top in the country, and very proud of the officers in 3rd District in this county as a whole. So the Wayne Avenue garage homicide, I'd love to tell you that there's updates, but there's really not. I spoke with major crimes investigators. There's no new information as far as that crime is concerned. And as soon as I do learn of anything of substance, I'll certainly get it out to the community, because I know it's on everybody's mind. Going down the list, the Ellsworth Drive Fenton car event, that was the donuts at that intersection. Something I wanted to make clear, and I've been talking about this ever since this occurred. When you looked at social media and you looked at some of the stories that came out of that night, you would have thought that event lasted for 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe even half an hour, and that it was utter chaos. I just want to make sure people understand. I have a lot of resources in downtown Silver Spring. The first officer, which was one of my overtime officers that we put down there for saturation details, he was on scene within a minute of that call. And once other officers got there, which everybody got there very quickly, we broke that event up in under 4 minutes and had it out of downtown Silver Spring. I personally consider that a victory, and I want to make sure people understand that. And I spoke about this earlier today in a meeting. We do not use our vehicles to ram these vehicles. We don't set up roadblocks to block in these vehicles, and we do not pursue these vehicles. All of those things present risks in of themselves, and so we're not going to add to the chaos. What we do try to do is we try to identify the drivers or the vehicles, and we work with a lot of agencies within the region in the DMV where these cars and these car groups are tracked. And our hope is that we can use the intelligence that we gathered from cameras and from officers' documentation to maybe track down individuals and deal with them. But really, the state of Maryland's not really set up, or Montgomery County, to charge them with anything other than really traffic violations. So the idea that we would chase those cars up 29 or out of the county is just not going to happen. And again, what my message to my officers is get there as quick as possible and break it up. and bring calm to a chaotic situation. And I think they're doing a good job in doing that. We do monitor social media, but I will tell you that event was not posted, and we didn't have any lead time or any information that was going to occur. So to have that broken up in 4 minutes, I was pretty happy about that. So thank you for my officers doing that. Carjackings. So we're going to talk about carjackings in a little bit in a couple slides, but we obviously started out the year with a fair share of carjackings, three particular ones, 2 downtown and 1 up on Cherry Hill. And we've had, I think, 5 since the new year. And obviously a big concern of mine. When we get to the carjacking slides, we'll talk more about that, show a little bit more of a comparison of how we ended the year compared to our regional counties and the District of Columbia, and also just talk a little more about steps we're taking to combat carjackings. Motor vehicle thefts are up for 2023. Significantly, they're up. And then also in downtown Silver Spring and up the 29 corridor are our most affected areas that we're seeing a lot of motor vehicle thefts. And we'll talk about that more. The county has, if anybody was tracking what we've been doing over the last couple of years, we disbanded our auto theft unit. And I think we finally realized that might not have been a great idea, and we've since put it back together. And so we have an auto theft unit that I'm hoping can make a pretty high impact on auto thefts, not only in the 3rd district, but in the entire county. And then overdoses, we're still fighting this battle with overdoses with opioids. There's something that's interesting and pretty sad and spooky is we're starting to see younger overdoses with opioids. And in the last couple years, the 30 to 39 year olds were kind of the target area of where we were seeing opioids. We're starting to see much younger overdoses, and that's really of concern of ours. We're doing a lot of work with the COPE trailer, which is the community opioid prevention and education trailer, with the PTSAs. The PTAs in the area, and I'm hoping to get that trailer in Silver Spring. And so for those who are on this call, if it's something that you'd like to see at some of your events, it's an amazing trailer that brings awareness to loved ones and parents of potential opioid abusers. So with that, let's go to the next slide. Tony, you going to take this? Uh-oh, there you go.
Yep, sorry about that. Thank you, Commander. And again, Mr. Bowser, thank you again for hosting us here today. So a little bit more about the carjackings. We closed out 2022 with 77 in the whole county. That's not just Silver Spring. In the first month, we've already had 10 for this year. So we're not pleased with where our trend is. I can tell you in 2021, we had about 59. So they are kind of ticking up a little bit. Last year, again, we had 33 in 2022 compared to 34 just in the 3rd district. So the numbers in the district level between 2021 and 2022 are very similar, but countywide they have ticked up. Most of the carjackings that we've had in the 3rd district have occurred in the downtown Silver Spring area. And there's that map on the kind of right-hand side, lower right-hand corner there. That's where we're recovering many of these carjacked or stolen vehicles. And as you can see, a lot of them are being recovered in the District of Columbia. So kind of armed with that knowledge, we did look into some stats at our colleagues, in the region. And Prince George's County, they had, according to WTOP, they were averaging about 10 carjackings a week over there. And then DC had a little over 485 carjackings in 2022. So they do have numbers that are much higher than ours. I will tell you, and actually, I guess we'll get to this in a minute, but we have taken some steps to put officers in areas where we've had some of these issues, some more of these high visibility patrols. Our officers have been recovering a lot of firearms. So last year, the whole county recovered about 1,200. That does include people that surrendered their weapons, voluntarily to the department. Again, sometimes a loved one will pass away that had firearms, and we'll have, as a service, anybody can come into a station and kind of surrender those firearms. But a lot of these were also recovered on traffic stops or during other incidents. So just in the 3rd district, about 230 of them were recovered. And this includes 49 PMFs, or what we call ghost guns. So these are guns that are being kind of 3D printed, and they're ordering kits online to do the final assembly of these weapons. And they're very, very difficult to track. They don't usually have serial numbers, and they're a challenge for us because people that are prohibited from getting firearms are seemingly able to get their hands on these guns much easier. And I just want to highlight again some of the great work our officers are doing. We do get a report every week that talks about firearms in the county. Just in the 3rd district, our officers recovered, it was 5 in our weekly summary we got yesterday. And since then, our DCAT team made another arrest for another gun. So we've had 6 guns in about the past 8 days that have been recovered, primarily on traffic stops. One of them was also, it was a hit and run collision. They found the vehicle nearby. The vehicle was stolen and also had a firearm inside. So our folks have been very, very busy in recovering a lot of firearms. And just our DCAT team alone recovered about 29, and it might have actually ticked up to 30 firearms in just the last year.
Yeah, and Tony, before you move the slide, I just want to highlight a couple things that are really important. So that DCAT 3 DCAT seizure, they're now at 37 firearms, and they seem to almost get a firearm every single night on traffic stops. But what's interesting is we're starting to get returns. They're called NIBIN hits. But as I've talked to a lot of you about, whenever we have an incident where we either seize a firearm or we get shell casings, and we send this evidence in, we're doing comparisons. We have 6 incidents where guns that we're seizing were used in crimes in the District of Columbia. And when you start going through these lists, these guns are regional. They're in Virginia, they're in DC, they're in PG, and they're in Montgomery County. It goes to show you that our boundaries, our jurisdictional boundaries, are very porous, and we're seeing a lot of cross-jurisdictional crime. And it's important for us to continue to do these traffic stops. It's important for us to continue to do proactive work to get these guns off the street. I will tell you that that we are basically getting a firearm for every 200 traffic stops that we're making in the county. But 3D leads the entire county, which is a good thing, but a bad thing. And quite frankly, as I was saying today earlier, it's kind of a scary thing. There's a lot of guns out there. So something that's really on our mind, and we're going to keep the pressure on to get these guns. Is this one back to me, Tony?
I can take it. I think.
Okay.
So in addition to doing our boots on the ground, our minimum staffing at the patrol level, we've continued with our high visibility evening details and overnight. And what that is we've been having a group of officers in the downtown Silver Spring area, covering the evening hours, and then around midnight we have a shift change, and there's a second set of officers that are working until 5 or 6 in the morning on some nights where we've had some issues. And that's been going on for about a year. And I think we've seen some of the results of that, where some of our issues that we were having during those times have decreased. due to some of those carjackings that we just spoke about, we added a lunchtime high visibility detail with 3 officers, and that just started the end of January. And the feedback from that has been incredible. We've been, they're down kind of at Ellsworth and Fenton and in that area. We have them walking around a little bit, and we've been hearing from a lot of folks that have seen them out there and been very pleased to see them. And we think it's having a good deterrent effect. In addition, we added our mobile cameras to that same area. These are cameras that we got just a few months ago, but they're trailer cameras. We can put them up anywhere we need in the district. And if we do have an issue, our dispatch call, our Violent Crime Information Center can pull those cameras and actually watch the feeds and go back and see some historical feeds if we do have any issues in the area of those cameras. So those have been great. You might see them out there. We could also turn on the lights, so there's kind of flashing red and blue lights and everything, which has been great for us and a big deterrent. In addition, we were able to get our central traffic unit. This is a county unit that moves around as needed. They got pulled into the Silver Spring district, and they've been here for a little over a week working in the central business district primarily. As the commander talked about, we also are spinning back up our auto theft unit, and I believe they already have some people working there, and they've actually, I've seen some of their work. They're already making some arrests and working some really good cases and tying some pieces together. And then as we've always done, we're still coordinating with our partners. We've been working with Maryland State Police and other agencies, sharing information, and they've been sending some resources down our way. So, Commander, anything else to add?
Yeah, just going to say that, for people on the call, I know that we're talking about all of the 3rd district. And yes, we do put a lot of resources downtown to kind of stomp out the violence going on down there. But I just want to make it clear that we're staffing at normal rates in the rest of the district, and we're doing things with our midnight officers, with nighttime patrols in neighborhoods. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but we are doing things in the Piney Branch area, Long Branch. We're doing directed patrols up the 29 corridor into Burtonsville and Briggs Cheney. So we haven't forgotten about you either, and we'll talk about some of the things that we're doing as we move through the slides. Okay, so interestingly enough, if there's maybe somebody that's on the call was at the meeting, but I met with East County, the representatives from the East County with Jeru Bendy, who is the regional director up in that region. And we talked about a whole bunch of things that didn't even really involve police, but also at the meeting was Councilmember Kristen Mink, who represents this part of the county. And during the conversation, mental health and homelessness came up as it does quite a bit. I was very encouraged to see where Councilmember Mink recognized that police need to get out of this business. She was talked about HHS kind of taking steps to be more proactive in mental health and homeless issues that aren't violent. But ultimately, what I've always been talking about and what I'm slowly starting to see is the police having to respond to fewer of these events. However, these numbers are old, but we kind of ended 2022 with 512 mental health issues with 458 mental illness emergency petitions. And again, just to put a little perspective on that, that was 458 times that a minimum of 2 officers were taken out of service to deal with somebody having a mental crisis. Sometimes that can be hours at a hospital. And so my goal here is to recoup those hours and get the officers on the road, keep them on the road, keep them in patrol, keep them doing proactive enforcement and patrols in your neighborhood. So I'm encouraged to see that the new council is very much looking at these issues. I know that Don Lukey is really a huge advocate for this. And so I see good things coming out of council, and I also see the county executive moving forward with changes in HHS to hopefully facilitate some improvement in this area. But I will say that there are things, there are obviously very violent situations that we will always be in, and we won't be abandoning this at all. So we will still be in this game. So community engagement, we'll just go over this a little bit, but this is, I think, I've met with a number of different groups in the last couple of weeks. Woodmore was one of the groups that I met with. What's good about meeting with these groups is I kind of learn some of their concerns. For Woodmore, there's some traffic issues, there's some quality of life issues. They were dealing with some auto thefts and theft from autos. So we had a good conversation about things that they could do to make themselves not victims of those things. And I also promised them some patrols in their neighborhoods. I will say that our community traffic enforcement officer, Craig Cupiello, is getting ready to move the signboard down into Woodmore. We're going to put it on some of the key cut through roads down there. And really the focus there is going to be on stop signs, and the message is going to be stop means stop. And we're going to be doing some enforcement down there. And with the enforcement, it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. You get the high visibility of the officer, and then you get the deterrent effect with the driving. So we're gonna continue our work in Woodmore. And then for all of these communities, I've tasked my midnight officers when they do have downtime, which sometimes some nights are not as good as others, but when they are in downtime, instead of being out on the major arterial roadways, my focus is for them to be in your neighborhoods. So if you see cruisers going through your neighborhoods with their alley lights on and their blue lights, it's to kind of keep track of your yards and your homes and make sure that things are quiet. And my hope is actually that they stumble upon some of our theft from auto suspects, which there's so many of them. So you're going to start seeing things like that. We've been doing that in North Hills with Eric Cathcart as being a leader for that community, and we've actually had some really good success with adopt a neighborhood program. We did a speed study in there, which I still need to contact Eric about and give him the results of. But we've been doing some other things to work with that neighborhood. We have some problem houses up there that we're dealing with. But the whole focus of that is that we have, my new lieutenants, this is the first thing I talk to them about is these lieutenants are going to be assigned to kind of follow up with these neighborhood things that we're doing, the complaints that we're dealing with, but we need to follow up more. And actually, at the end of this slideshow, I was pretty impressed when this was shown to me today, but we've got something in our last slide that will help you deal with any concerns that you might have in your neighborhoods. And then really, as we move through the year, I have a pretty big expectation of reaching our young people in the community, 6th, and 8th graders, 6th, 7th, and 8th. But also some of our teenagers with the various activities and with futsal and more basketball. And we're going to try to incorporate an introduction to our Explorer program, which is kind of like it's easiest to describe as like a Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts for police, right? We have Explorers who are young people that get kind of introduced to law enforcement. Our hope there is to attract them. Those are people from our community, and those are the people that we want on our department one day. And the goal there would be get them into that program, and then graduate them onto our cadet program where they could start making a little bit of money while they're going to college. So good stuff going on, and we'll keep you posted on all those things. So these are just some numbers. This is the reality that we're dealing with. There's no mystery here. I'm authorized 164 sworn positions. However, I currently have 139. Of those 139, it sometimes varies based on military leave, or officers that are hurt, officers that are on limited duty, where I can sometimes have up to 12 officers not on the road. But we do backfill, and I do meet my minimum staffing at all times, utilizing a callback list and holdovers. But those are some numbers that we're dealing with. Departmentally, we this continues to climb as well, but we're anywhere from 125 to 129 down. We have a huge emphasis on recruitment, and I will say that this is going to be in March. We will graduate a class that is close to 30. I know it started that way, and I think we've lost a few, but it'll be one of our biggest classes in the last couple years. So I do believe not a majority, but quite a few of those officers will be coming down to Silver Spring, and I hope to get them trained up in the training, the field training, and get them in service as a single unit as soon as possible. That's it, Tony, for that one. I think we kind of really hit everything here. I mean, my main focus is to really work with the communities and keep you in the know of what we're doing, and the things that we're seeing, trends that we're seeing. I've kind of been all over the place on some of these slides, but really the things I'm concerned about for some areas, like I indicated earlier, on our 29 corridor, from White Oak up to Burtonsville. Really, my concerns up there are auto theft and theft from autos, and also shed burglaries continue to be a problem. Again, the nighttime patrols, I'm hoping will put a damper on some of that activity. We're seeing the same thing in our 4th district, and I know that our 4th district is in that region, on their side of the boundary line, doing a lot of increased patrol, which I think is going to benefit us as well. But really, and the good or the bad part of that is, well, the good part is that it's not a violent crime, it's a property crime, but it's still a concern of mine, and it's quite annoying. And we are working with regional partners in Prince George's County specifically, because a lot of the trendy theft from autos and the shed burglars are regional. And so a lot of times when we make an arrest, or there's an arrest in PG County, we can oftentimes close out a lot of those cases in our district as well. So but anyhow, I think really that's gonna be it for me. I think we have one more slide, right, Tony? And you're gonna explain this one.
Yep. Thank you, sir. We know there's lots of people on this call. We're going to try to answer some questions. If anybody has a question that maybe they don't want to ask in front of everybody, or something that's very specific to them, you can scan this QR code with your phone, or snap a picture and use another phone to do it, or whatever you need to do. And basically, it just asks a few questions. But one of them is if you want to have an officer reach back out to you and provide, if you have a very specific question. The other thing is, we put this together and we want to make sure we're kind of really hitting what you guys want to hear, answering the questions that's important to you. So we kind of ask you, hey, is this what you guys were looking for? What did we miss? How can we do a little better? So if you don't mind, we really appreciate it. I promise you it won't take more than a minute to just scan it and let us know how we're doing and how we can do better for the next time. I'll just add a little caveat, please. If you're trying to report a crime or anything like that, please still go through our, either non-emergency or emergency number. don't use this to report anything. This is more just if you have questions, and also let us know how we can do a little better.
All right, with that, Alan, we'll turn it back over to you and any questions.
Thank you. Anybody has a question, please use the raise hand function. You can find that under the reactions button at the bottom of the screen. Reactions and raise hand is there. Let me start off though. So Commander, I'd like some more information about your deployment and visibility in downtown Silver Spring. I thought there was going to be 3 closed circuit television cameras, one on Bonifant, one in Georgia, and then one in Fenton and Ellsworth. And it looks like the one in Bonifant is no longer there. So I wanted to ask about that. The other thing is I've been there, and sometimes I see a police car that's parked up by a Copper Canyon. I don't see an officer nearby. I'm wondering if it's been considered to put a car sort of on permanent station at the intersection of Fenton and Ellsworth, because I'm thinking that if there was a car there, maybe the performance cars, the car event wouldn't taken place if there had been a car there, and there may not have been the armed carjacking outside the Chick-fil-A if there was more MCPD visibility down there.
Yep. So as far as the cameras are concerned, we're in a little bit of transition because, as most of you know, the first cameras that were downtown were we were leasing them from a company. The system that was operating on Bonifant was actually still a leased trailer. We told them we didn't want it anymore, and they didn't come pick it up, so we left it there. And then they came and got it. So, but we have 2 additional cameras that are operational down there, and if I'm not mistaken, and I know that now Captain Dave Reed is still very much involved in putting those camera systems out, but we're also putting one out down on Wayne at Colesville, I thought, near the McDonald's. And is Jacob Newman on this call?
He was, yes.
There
he is.
Hey, Commander McBain. Yeah, we're I know that now Captain Reed has been working with Montgomery Parks, as DGS is going to be transitioning that asset, that park, over to Montgomery Parks jurisdiction in the coming months. And so, as I understand it, there's the right wiring to hardwire cameras in, and it's just a matter of ensuring that they're speaking the same language, so to say, from the ability to tap into them. But the county, excuse me for not knowing, Firewire, I'm not sure, the fiber optics, the right, the necessary cabling for cameras is already set up there. So I know that Captain Reed's been working on that diligently.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the cameras. And Alan, as far as the a cruiser permanently parked at Ellsworth and Fenton, we did have a cruiser out there for a little while. What it really comes down to, and I think we even entertained putting a camera system over there. We'll eventually go back to parking. I encourage the officers to park there when they do their walking patrols. But just to leave a car stationary in that one position all day long and all night long, I sometimes can't use it's not a proper use of my resource when I've got crime, kind of all over downtown. And yes, that's a hot spot, but I do get and because something we didn't talk about is my community, my central business district team, who really spend quite a bit of time in that region and along Ellsworth there and in Fenton. So periodically, and I'm hearing where you're coming from, and I'll start looking at and working with Tony at seeing if we can deploy a car out there more often. But I just don't want to hyper focus on one intersection all the time.
If I might just add in a couple more details with some privilege here, there actually has been a camera right there
Yeah.
for about 2 weeks
Yeah.
at Fenton and Ellsworth, propped up just before on the Peterson side, but it's actually county, little parcel right there. So there's been a camera there for some time, and just channeling Captain Reed again. When that incident happened, the carjacking Chick-fil-A, I believe there was an officer in the Chick-fil-A. There were two walking up either Ellsworth, and there was a car right around the corner. As many of you know, my office is based out of the Civic Building, and I also want to just voice appreciation to colleagues here in the police department for hearing the cry of the community loud and clear. I have too noticed a much greater presence. I've noticed this over the past year in all areas of the urban district of downtown Silver Spring, but just in the past couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, I looked out my back window on Veterans Place, and there was a car parked there and somebody doing foot patrol. I walked out of the building in the front, and there was a car stationed there. I went and did something else. The car was gone. I came back. There was another car, another squad car parked there right at that intersection. So, with limited resource, I want to voice my appreciation for this team and for Captain Reed and his leadership as well.
Well, thank you very much, Jacob. And there was I saw a question come up in the chat while we're talking about the Chick-fil-A carjacking. So look, we've talked about this before with stolen vehicles, but we're still having people leaving their cars unattended and running. And these suspects or these guys, these criminals, they're looking for the least resistance and the fastest getaway, right? So a car that's running and sitting out in front of Chick-fil-A is a prime target. And it's either going to be stolen, or as the person approaches, there's going to be a plan to set up and jump the individual and take their car, which we would consider a carjacking. So, when we're talking about these things, I'm not making excuses, but what I'm saying is that, community members have a responsibility to be aware of their surroundings as well, and don't make yourself a victim any more than you have to be. That's a concern of mine, and I've talked about that quite a bit. And also, somebody had asked, are these just joyrides? Really, what most of these carjackings. So somebody had asked me one time, are they bringing them to chop shops? I don't even think that's a thing anymore. I'm not positive, but and I'm sure they are. But really, because we're finding these cars in DC, it's because these individuals are hanging out in Silver Spring, and then they get bored and they want to go back home. And instead of taking the bus, they'd rather just stick a gun in somebody's face and take their car. And that's extremely problematic. But these cars are basically being used to get home, and they're not being used. Occasionally you will see one that's driven for a couple days, but they recognize that the vehicle is going to be hot, and as soon as they're done with that night, they're done with the car. So it is somewhat of a joyride, and it's unfortunate that we have individuals that think that way.
Well, I just want to follow up on my point, which is I just think it would give significantly more comfort to the community if they see some kind of permanent presence in downtown Silver Spring the day after the car event at Fenton and Ellsworth. I did see a car at the intersection, for a few hours, but I know people would feel more confident, because now what we hear on social media and the listservs is that there's some families that won't go to downtown Silver Spring to take advantage of the amenities there, and some families won't let their kids go down there as well. That's not a good look for the community. So we hope that the police can help us raise that comfort level. Let me turn it over to Eric, and it's a question and not a speech, please.
Well, it's neither a speech or a question. It's. I just want to thank you, Commander. The positivity. Since we've been a part of your Adopt a Community program, no news is good news. It's working. We're right on the fringe, and the police presence in our community is most welcome. In fact, tomorrow night is falafel night for our food truck program. So any of your police officers, any of your officers working tomorrow night at around 7 o'clock, 4 to 7, please come on over to Parkside. speaking of Parkside, that's an 11-acre campus that's owned by Montgomery County Public Schools. It's sort of a no man's land between us and downtown Silver Spring. And I'm taking advantage of this opportunity to reach back out to you and say, I would love to have a conversation with you and Captain McSwain and see what we can do to come up with sort of a cross-collateral collaboration of the two departments to just give us a little bit more coverage at night in that property. Thank you.
Yep. And I am meeting with it's actually Chief McSwain, but
I'm sorry.
I'm meeting with Chief McSwain on Saturday. And that was one of my number one things I was going to talk about, especially one of the things that I'm kind of going to request is is it an abandoned swim center or building down there? There's
Yeah, there's two buildings. It used to be a elementary school. Now they're under lease by nursery schools. So we're even in a hotter position because we've got a lot of little children.
Yeah.
And we really just need to have that level of comfort that the police, either one of the forces, are keeping an eye on us. So.
Well, my big request is going to be that when those officers, park police officers, are writing reports or have some downtime, that they park in those lots and show basically a presence down there. But I'll be speaking with him on Saturday.
Well, thank you so much. What you've done for our community is most acknowledged. It is the most positive thing that's happened to us, and right across the board, my community is thrilled to see your police officers coming through our neighborhood patrolling. And again, no news is good news. We haven't really had any big problems since we started this program. So thank you so much for covering us and helping us knock down these little nuisance crimes.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate that.
If anybody has a question, please raise your hand or wave wildly. I was just looking at the chat, and two questions of interest to me. One is, what is your professional feeling about another district, another substation in downtown Silver Spring? Some people seem to be very interested in that as a solution to some of our concerns.
Yep.
And can you answer that question, please?
Yeah. We do have a substation. That's where our Central Business District team works out of. It's actually the fire station down by George Avenue at Silver Spring Avenue. We don't run a ton of resources out of there, but it is a space that we use, and a lot of our George sector, especially the day work officers, they actually have their roll call down there, so that if something does pop off early in the morning, they're already in downtown Silver Spring. As far as a 7th District station, I'm going to reserve any comments on that for the chief of police. I mean, that's all I'll tell you is that in order to create another district, it's just not created overnight. One, we have a shortage of 129 police officers, so you'd have to find out how you're going to reallocate resources. But two, you're really redrawing a lot more than just the 3rd district. It would really offset everything, and there'd have to be a kind of holistic approach at redrawing some lines that would affect almost every district in the county. There's no doubt that there's talk about this, and I just don't want to. I don't want to talk outside of what I believe I should, and I think that you'll see more updates to the community about our efforts and our position on a 7th district from the chief, and I'd have to respect his, him being my boss, and it's something that's a huge undertaking that I think he should report on.
No, I understand. I'm sorry
Yep.
I asked that question. Kind of. So Naima, you've raised your hand. You have a question, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bowser. I'm a resident of DC, and I just live south of Eastern Avenue, and I just wanted to echo the Silver Spring neighbors' concerns about downtown Silver Spring. I know pre-pandemic, many of my neighbors, including myself, we would walk down to downtown Silver Spring from, just right at the Eastern Line to enjoy many of the amenities, the movie theaters, the restaurants. And there is a feeling of not feeling safe, even driving, or much less going up there. I do remember young people being able to go there and go to a movie and feeling relatively safe. And now that my own children are, at the end of their high school matriculation, downtown Silver Spring is not a place in which I feel comfortable with them going, particularly girls. I don't feel like there is enough of a police presence. And I do get the alerts on the South Silver, what is it called? The source of the spring. There seems to be a lot of young adolescent girls that are reported as missing. It doesn't, the blog doesn't say what the cause of them being reported missing, but it does seem to be a lot of adolescent girls from that area. And so my first question is that area now becoming a target area for young girls to be trafficked from? And then my second question is there a possibility of some type of joint task force with the 4th district for DC to kind of just cover this whole area? And then my last question is, I think there was a representative from Raskin's office on, is what pressure can be put on at the federal level to kind of press the U.S. attorney here in DC for more prosecutions, particularly since most of the crimes are kind of becoming more cross-jurisdictional for the border community. So 3 questions. I know that was a lot, but whoever wants to jump in there.
Yeah, so the female trafficking, I don't have any intelligence, and I haven't been provided with any information to indicate that that is something that's a problem. We have a Vice and Intelligence unit that occasionally does work in downtown Silver Spring, but also throughout the entire county. And they do have trafficking cases, but nothing that has been considered a like a consistency, something that's consistent for that area of the 3rd district. If that's, I know that doesn't really say much, but I don't have any intelligence to indicate that's an issue.
Commander McBain,
Not that, yeah.
Can I just jump in for clarification on that point as well? The source of the spring actually covers loosely the entirety of the Silver Spring Regional Service Area, which is Rock Creek to the west, Prince George's County line to the east, everything south of the Beltway plus 4 Corners. But oftentimes what's reported in the source of the spring, particularly, and I've too noticed many announcements with the regards to missing individuals. They also, just to proliferate the message and get community input and support and cross communication, report on cases outside of that regional area. What I'll say anecdotally, and please don't quote me on this, but frequently what I notice, without having any reason or any detail why, is usually within a day to 5 days, there will also be an update that person has been found. So I just think it's hard to comment specifically in saying that it's focused and located in the urban district in downtown Silver Spring, and I do try and check the addresses of last known or of residents, whatever details included. And then also, in terms of are they trafficked and where they're going, though I can't comment definitively, I do know that anecdotally, oftentimes it's within a few days. There is, quite thankfully, a positive announcement that the individual has been found or returned.
Thank you, Jacob.
Sorry to kind of knock you off there, Commander McBain.
Nope.
There were 3 questions, and one of them is for Mr. Young, but I too closely monitor source of the spring.
Cool. Thank you so much. And getting back to your questions, I do not work with the 4th District in DC with their command typically, but I know for a fact that we have radio communications with the 4th District. We also utilize the helicopter out of DC and Prince George's County when we have a cross-jurisdictional issue, or we have, say, a stolen vehicle or a felony vehicle that's being pursued into DC. We oftentimes very quickly have communications with the 4th District and also Prince George's County 2nd District. And the only thing that I would respectfully disagree with you on is the presence of police. I'll say it again. Downtown Silver Spring is the most heavily policed area of all of Montgomery County. And at some point, it can be almost an occupying force. There will never be a day that we see an officer at every corner. And I don't think anybody wants that. And I've certainly put a lot of resources down there. And it takes a toll on the number of hours that these guys and gals are working. So I'm going to continue with my efforts, but just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Commander. And,
Yeah.
I appreciate that my grandfather was in law enforcement. And so in Texas, though, when Texas handles things a lot different, let's not go there, though.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate your response. And I do agree that no one wants it to look like a military presence. But at the same time, there has been a change.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
And even just from walking from DC down by under the little bridge, under the railroad,
Oh, yeah.
like I wouldn't, before it seemed safe, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's getting to a point where, some people feel like, well, I'll just stay home.
Yeah.
And that there are people who are outside of your community who are taking over. And I don't mean that in a racial or pejorative sense, but I mean taking over and bringing havoc.
Yeah.
They're not enhancing the area. They're not promoting wellness, whether it be social, emotional, religious wellness, and they're definitely not helping with economic development. And even your late night venues, I'm just going to tell you, when you all kick them out, they come right to my community. Yeah. Because they can keep their clientele and still stay, fairly close to where they used to be. And our community's sick of it because it's very difficult to remove these alcohol establishments out of DC because we don't have the same mechanisms that you all have where the county controls the liquor.
Right.
So I think if possible, if you could work with DC to have more collaboration, and perhaps it would relieve some of the stress on your officers, because I do know as public servants, you all have a lot of stress that's going on. And also it would provide a safer place for all of us, including yourselves. It's not comfortable for citizens to see law enforcement being put in situations where they may either be provoked or forced to use any type of violence or force whatsoever.
Right.
And so to the extent other measures can be made to deter people from congregating in downtown Silver Spring, to whether it's turning their car around and making smoke, whether it's hanging out and jacking people, go somewhere else with that. Or where I came from in Texas, people threw house slippers and shoes at people, and it worked. And maybe we need to go back to that.
Well, I appreciate your comments, ma'am.
And let me just follow up, because you've seen it in the chat, and I know from personal experience, people are really unnerved by the carjacking at the Safeway, where they don't feel comfortable going there anymore, which is very problematic because you need to go shopping. How does your tactics and strategy sort of address that issue? Is that just one-off? Should people be concerned? I know they need to be aware, but are you having any kind of proactive policing that gets to places like maybe the Giant and East West Highway or the Safeway or the Whole Foods. So that's the first question. Do you have a strategy for sort of dealing with that, even if it's infrequent? And then a question from my neighbor just now. She comes home late. She's a surgeon, comes home late. And her concern is that she thinks that there could be substantially more lighting in public spaces in Silver Spring. And I'm wondering whether or not you have any conversations with county government about more lighting in downtown Silver Spring.
Yeah, so Jacob Newman's been talking quite a bit more than normal, which I really appreciate. But Jacob and Dr. Stoddard and Captain Reed and I, we meet quite a bit. We talk about these strategies. I know that Jacob works with Carson and the Red Shirts, and we've had meetings where I believe, and Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's been some grants that have even been have furnished lights in certain areas of downtown. So we're always trying to increase the more lighting that we can. And so
I'm happy to provide,
yeah.
I'm happy to provide a couple of quick updates, some progress thus far and where we're going next on this. I want to completely validate the sentiments of Ms. Jefferson and the comments that I'm hearing. I'm reading here in the chat. It is disheartening. I've only been here officially in this role for 1.5 years. And I feel like in many ways we've made a lot of progress and been incredibly responsive. And at the same time, I know there's a lot of work still to go. People often talk about the crime as a singular thing. And what I've heard, and I think what's reflected in the chat, is that these are really complex issues. About 1.5 years ago, I think there were six shootings in as many weeks, somewhere thereabouts, 4 shootings in 6 weeks, 40 rounds just on the border of the District of Columbia. A lot of things closely tied to those evening, nighttime hours and after hours into the wee morning. And that's really where police and an intergovernmental task force placed a lot of emphasis and effort, doing spot checks of those late night businesses, partnering with businesses to professionalize their security. I mean, for the frequent flyers on the Safe Silver Spring meetings, you've heard some of these updates from Commander and some of the other people on the police force. And by and large, it has been incredibly effective. And now crime is popping up in some of the other ways where it's more in the daytime to early evening hours. And I've heard the analogy of whack-a-mole, trying to grab a hold of an issue. I think it would be nice to throw the shoe and push it off somewhere else. But I think that's also indicative of perhaps not getting at the root causes of some of these things. So just to kind of take it back to the lighting comment, one of the things, in addition to popping up cameras and LPRs in the urban district, was a lighting initiative. And why I say disheartening is because in that CSX tunnel, the Silver Spring Urban District, affectionately known as the Red Shirts, put together an effort, and that tunnel is more well lit than it has been in previous 2-3 years. There was a whole tree planting effort to reduce kind of tree blockage and elimination of dead trees and plant new trees so that we have attractive foliage. And along Silver Spring Ave, there's still a lighting initiative that's going in through partnership with MCDOT, and of course Pepco is aware as well. In 1 or 2 garages, enhance the lighting there. And upon the advocacy of the Silver Spring Citizens Advisory Board and Urban District Advisory Committee, want to recognize one representative who crosses over to both and is also a resident here, Jay Elvove. We will be advocating for that in a budget request this year. So I guess, to kind of summarize my rambling remarks here, is that we as county government have really tried to look at this comprehensively and holistically. it hurts me, to hear that families and children and parents and folks don't feel safe coming down to Silver Spring. I think that we all, not to be tone deaf, but I think we, after hearing comments like this from the commander and all of the positive work that's there, after recognizing that in 2021 there were 8 homicides in the downtown, but in 2022 there was only 1 at the end of it, that not all crime can be stopped, but crime solving rate for major crimes is incredible. And I don't have that off the tip of my tongue because I don't want to misspeak, but I think like 98% of homicides in the past year were solved. It's a place that I love. It's a place that I bring my family and my 2 young children, 6 years old and 2 years old. I'm going to keep on doing it. I like seeing kids out there ice skating. I like seeing kids, going to Ben and Jerry's and getting something over at Popeyes or Potbelly's. But I'm not tone deaf, and your comments mean a lot. We're going to keep on trying to do more. I'm optimistic about some new leadership with Lieutenant Galladora, and glad that Captain Reed is not going too far. So thanks for allowing me to say a couple remarks.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. Let's go to Dan. Dan, do you have a question? Dan, you are poorly lit there at your house.
Does look
I have-
cozy though.
I have a burning issue.
There you go. That's a little better.
Just a suggestion. There were complaints about poor lighting. As somebody who lives in the downtown section of Silver Spring, I've watched with great disappointment inattentive drivers repeatedly hitting the lampposts on Fenton Street. We have one, for example, near where you often go to at the Veterans Facility, that was knocked over and it hasn't been replaced for weeks. But it would be so helpful if you could just put some reflective tape on the lamppost so that drivers can see it before they hit it. In the district, for example, I've noticed they've been doing that to fire hydrants. It's very effective. And even the fire hydrants here could use it. For example, the fire hydrant at the corner of Colesville and George Avenue was knocked over and hasn't been fixed for a long time. But just reflective tape would save everybody so much money and, keep the lighting as it should be. The Duncan administration did spend a lot of money improving all the lighting in downtown Silver Spring, but it's disheartening to see it all, fall apart because drug drivers just don't see these poles. And I know that the lamppost on my corner of Gist and Fenton, it's been hit by 3 or 4 times now. And the last time my nephew and I, we dragged it off the street. Those beasts are very heavy. But it would just save everybody a lot of money if you just put some green reflective tape on that. So that's my pitch. And the second thing I just wanted to bring to your attention is this morning when I was having a cup of coffee outdoors in front of Cafe at 9 in the morning, I looked up and there's this young man writing graffiti on the traffic control box at Bonifant and Georgia. And I followed him and he went down to that little park on Wayne and Georgia and added some more graffiti to the trash can there when nobody was looking. I quietly took a photo of him. I was just sort of going to ask the folks here, your expertise. Should I confronted this guy? The guy might have had a gun or something, so I was a little bit nervous about it. But I don't know what else to do when I see something like that. But I don't even understand the mentality of the guy to do something like that. But I photographed the graffiti and I gave it to somebody in your office. Maybe you'll recognize, what it says because it was unreadable to me. I don't know what his mindset is. Anyway.
We're not going to be able to figure that out. And I know that Commander McBain has said, you're not supposed to confront this guy. But Commander, let me just follow up on what Dan was saying, which is it helpful for you? I know we've learned that if you see something, say something.
Yes.
And to report it. Is it helpful to you and your officers if people do take pictures of people who are doing bad things?
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of that, and oftentimes we do this, if we get an officer down in the area, that officer can upload that into systems that we run, and we can get that picture to all of the cruisers and the officers that are working downtown. And it kind of gives us a heads, just a real quick heads up on who we're looking for. So yes, photos are great. And even just a quick call, you don't have to give your name. You can be anonymous and say, this is going on right now. And even though that's not a violent act, you are more than welcome to call 911 for a crime in progress like graffiti. And that's something that would expedite the call. So those things are very much encouraged.
And do we include taking pictures of license plates of vehicles that are driving erratically or look suspicious or something like that? License plates helpful?
License plates are helpful. A lot of times with the erratic driving, it's a little tougher, but where we see that a lot of times is if we recognize it's a chronic problem in the area, sometimes we can identify that driver and pay them a visit. And sometimes we even send letters to them and their insurance companies about the behavior of the driving.
Thank you for that. One of the questions in the chat had to do with the guns that you recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And the question was, if somebody's caught with a gun, what happens to them? If you do a traffic stop and somebody's got a gun that's on the passenger seat or is in the center console or however you find it, what happens to those individuals who have firearms in their vehicles?
So they're immediately arrested. They're taken into custody, and they're eventually transported up to the central processing unit in Rockville, where they go before a district court, commissioner. Yeah, and that commissioner then, based on the totality of the circumstances and other factors of who the person is, where they live, having a job, not having a job, and the seriousness of this crime, a bond is set, and that's then it's entered into the court system.
And does that happen 100% of the time if somebody's got a firearm in their vehicle?
So
If they
thing
don't
that
have a
works-
permit?
Yeah. It's just a matter of. So here's something to realize. So when you go through a course for a concealed carry, there's very specific rules of what a person should do if they're currently in possession of a firearm when a police officer approaches. And I'm not going to bore you with all the rules and stuff. But if we encounter somebody who legally is in possession of the firearm, we will confirm that. We will confirm that the firearm is properly owned by them and properly carried. We're not seeing that. And we're seeing stolen guns. We're seeing ghost guns. We're seeing unfortunately semi-automatic handguns with 30-round extended magazines. We're seeing some pretty violent weapons out there, and those individuals are immediately taken to jail. I'll tell you that one of the things that we periodically do is we track what's happening to these offenders, because as you guys know, the state's attorney's office is charged with putting the case together and prosecuting the case, and then we also look at what the judges are doing, and so we try to report back that. So it's sometimes a long process, but that's basically how it goes.
Thank you for that explanation. G. Smith, you have a question?
Yes. Hi. Good evening, everyone. How are you, Commander McBain?
I'm doing good, ma'am. Good to see you.
Good. I'm sure you're familiar with me. I'm part of the safety committee with Loss 24.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just had a quick question. We appreciate all you are doing, but I wanted to know if you're getting support from the legislation and the executive branch.
Yeah, so this is gonna be a loaded question to Jacob, but are we announcing Monday or
It's been such a long time coming, and it's what I would say is
yes?
we've been working on this for far too long. Yeah, the short answer is yes. The county executive has been supported for quite some time. There was indication that the previous council was going to introduce some legislation. As you know, that did not happen. But the county executive is transmitting legislation. It's not all inclusive of many of the things that have been talked about by advocates from Lofts 24 and others over the past year or so. But I do believe it's a starting point that recognizes kind of a proactive way that in non-punitive way that we can engage other businesses within proximity to some of these activities. And it's a countywide bill. So it will impact Silver Spring. It builds upon the good work that police have done with businesses. And if you are or are not satisfied, I strongly encourage, continued advocacy, because the council will have the opportunity to introduce amendments. Should folks want the bill to go farther, it is important that all elected officials, the executive branch as well, continue to hear that feedback. You have been abundantly clear in terms of what your hopes and expectations are, and I hope this gets close to meeting them, I should say.
Do you provide us with some sort of timetable as to when we can provide public comment, when we can show up at hearings and express our views? Because we all need to be engaged. As you know, our Lost 24 was hit on 3 separate occasions by stray bullets, and we're very invested in ensuring that something is done about the nightlife and the fact that our police officers are stretched thin, and that controlling the operational hours of these businesses will have a direct impact on improving quality of life and safety for all of those who are in, this mixed use community. We want to live in harmony. We want to make sure, that we have vibrant businesses. But the reason we came to this area was because we love Silver Spring, because it is a mixed use community. And we want to make sure that you hear and listen to not only the businesses, but the residents who reside in this community, the people who make this community what it is. It's not just the businesses. Thank you.
Hey, also, just to let you know, and it kind of piggybacks off of Jacob, Kate Stewart is a new council member down here. I've spoken with her a number of times. I think things are very positive with Kate down here. And I hope to see some really good things. She's ridden with my officers already. She's met with me in my office, and we have a good dialogue and communication going. I think coming from Tacoma Park as the mayor, I think she recognizes where you're coming from completely. And I'm pretty happy about the relationship that we have with her.
That's good to hear. She's good people. Let me mention this. Maybe last week, you had coffee with a cop at the 3rd district.
Yeah.
I only found out about that maybe an hour before it was going to take place. So I would recommend that there's some more advanced knowledge about that. But even more importantly, that's a difficult location for people to get to. So I was wondering to what extent you were planning to have more, and whether or not any of them would be in downtown Silver Spring. And further, it seems to make a lot of sense that you could do something like that at the farmer's market on the weekend. That would be an opportunity to meet more people. One of the things that I think I've raised with you a couple of times is that we don't know the officers and they don't know us.
Okay.
They don't know Eric. They don't know Susan. They don't know Jean. And this would be an opportunity to put names with faces, so people feel more comfortable with law enforcement. I think we really need to do more of that.
So Glenn DeFranco and Sergeant Troy Brenner are both ramping up our coffee with a cop. And I think the main thing there is I want to hit it at different times, not always during the middle of the day. And so duly noted, Alan, farmers market on the weekends, and we will be coming to downtown Silver Spring. I thought that we had something lined up with the Starbucks on Ellsworth, but there's certainly a number of different places that that we can do that, and we're going to continue with that as part of our community engagement.
And how would you evaluate this statement that our neighborhoods are safe? I've been telling people in the neighborhoods that we don't have the same kind of public safety issues that they have downtown, and that on balance, our neighborhoods are pretty safe. You know, occasionally there's theft from auto, but on balance, we're a pretty safe community when you're outside of these major areas.
Well, you know, I almost think it seems like I'm almost trying to deflect, but when you really look at the fact that Silver Spring, that borders the district and Prince George's County, and they are both seeing record numbers of carjackings to the tune of over 500. And we've kept Silver Spring to 33 or 34 and 74 for the whole county. That has to say something to people that we're holding the line. You know, I mean, those are just, if I was talking with this group and I had a number of like 200 carjackings, I don't even know how I would address that. It's bad enough having to answer to 34, but I think that we do have safe neighborhoods, and we are patrolling them as much as possible, and we're certainly stretched, right? Gina was hit it right on the nail, right on the head, but we're continuing our efforts to keep it a good place.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Commander McBain. So we're coming to the end of our time. On behalf of Safe Silver Spring, I want to thank Commander McBain and his lieutenant. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Our next meeting is in May. And of course, we reserve the opportunity to have a special meeting with Commander McBain and his staff in case something else comes up that merits a community concern. Please follow Safe Silver Spring on Facebook. Those of you who are interested in participating as board members or helping us out with community projects, please email me at alan.bowser@gmail.com. And feel free to reach out to Jacob about the issues that involve the county, particularly around lighting and any other concerns that you have. Anything else before we sign off for the evening? Jean, do you have a question, or are you just waving?
No, I just wanted to say I'm an old lady I'm my 84th year, and I love coming to downtown Silver Spring. And I thank Captain McBain and his lieutenants. I mean, you're making great progress. I don't hang out at night anymore. It's my old young days, but I do enjoy being in downtown Silver Spring and shopping down there when I go. And I do go down with my son and his family to restaurants downtown too. Not too often, but we go. So thank you. And we'll support all the legislation that will help to make it even safer.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. This concludes our meeting, and we'll see you next time.